want to make sure we're muted, but I don't know how to get to.
Maybe you have to get to it and then mute, and you'll be quiet.
Yeah, but I can't get to it. I'm stuck on the. All it gives me is the phone screen. I don't want to. Oh well, whatever. We'll get there. We're 3 minutes early. Oh, that's okay. With all that noise, I bet it. Oh, here we go. Mute.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think I'm the only one sharing my video for now. That's quite all right. If you can give me a thumbs up or a reaction to confirm you can both see my screen and you can hear me, I would greatly appreciate it.
I can see and hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Bernadette, for putting that into the chat.
I am able to hear you.
All right, howdy, Jim.
Howdy back, thanks.
Okay, so it looks like there might have been a little glitch with the wrong link. Some folks might be on the Google Meet link. So I just emailed everyone, and if others trickle in, great. Otherwise, we're gonna go ahead and get started here either way because it is 5:03 and it's nearing the end of the day. So why don't we jump right in? I hope you have a comfortable seat. Maybe you've already grabbed yourself a beer or a glass of wine. This is going to be a fun way to end the day. So I will jump right in. My name is Monique Mares. I am the coordinator for the Pueblo Food Project, and we are on the line today to talk about our food access survey results and some of the strategies that we're hoping to implement as a result of this investigation. Let's see, we don't have too many folks on the line, so why don't we go ahead and do a quick introduction. You don't have to turn your camera on, no need, but I'm just gonna call on folks as I see you here in my list, and maybe you can just briefly share your name and kind of who you're representing, and we will get started right after that. How about we'll start with Bernadette.
Hi, I'm Bernadette O'Keefe. I am the Program Administrator for the Assistance Programs Division at the Department of Human Services. So I manage the bulk of the food stamp and Medicaid cases in Pueblo County.
All right, Lindy. And Lindy might be en route. I saw her earlier today helping deliver CSAs.
I am here. I did make it back from Pueblo West and Avondale. It was a lot of fun. And I talked to people on Bluetooth the whole way, so it made a lot out of the day. My name is Lindy Webb. I do the Cooking Matters program. It's a campaign of Share Our Strength, which is known for the No Kid Hungry campaign. I've been doing that about 3 years here in Pueblo. And I also work at Care and Share Food Bank.
All right, thank you, Lindy. How about Philip?
Hi, everyone. My name is Philip. I'm a recent graduate of Colorado State University, Fort Collins. My major was in environmental sociology and sustainability. So I'm just interested in seeing what this project is about. I really love the food system studies that I did, as well as my water studies. So just trying to get involved.
All right, welcome, Philip. And Jim.
So yes, I'm a retired physician in Pueblo, and before I went into human science, I was really an ecology major. Now that I'm retired, I'm able to work at that broader spectrum, work with the Institute of the Built Environment at CSU Fort Collins, work with CSU here, and I'm really proud and really happy to be involved with the Food Project. Sorry, just a minute. People, and we're being visited by a city council member right now, and my dogs are going crazy. Really happy to be involved with the environmental working group, and look forward to more of the same, because this program has taken off in an unbelievable fashion. Thank you to Ms. Mares.
All right, Katie, how about you?
I'm Katie Davis. I'm Director of Operations at the Pueblo Department of Public Health and Environment, and I've been a part of this Food Council almost since the beginning. I've missed the first couple of meetings, but have been interested in food access issues in our community for many years now, and happy to see the next part of the assessment, because the health department completed an assessment in 2013. So this is great to see what it looks like 6-7 years later. So thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump in. So the idea is that we're going to run through some results. We'll have a couple of spots for discussion, lots of time for questions, and then we'll talk a little bit about strategies. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Okay, so for most of you on the phone, you have an idea of what the Pueblo Food Project is, but for the folks who aren't as aware, I'll just share a couple of quick stats with you. We are right now a 100+ member strong coalition, about 15 months old, so pretty new to the scene. We have 5 working groups, 3 task forces, 1 advisory council, and 1 youth council. We're sending out invitations to our youth council this week, so very excited for that inaugural class. The Pueblo Food Project is co-chaired by Mayor Gradisar and County Commissioner Chris Wiseman, and we have our large coalition meeting the last Wednesday of every month from 8 to 10. Let's see. These are a couple of kind of visions and beacons of where the Pueblo Food Project is trying to go. Our North Star is listed there, and I'm not going to read it out loud for you. You can see your screen. But really the goal of the Pueblo Food Project is to develop a sustainable, vibrant, nutritious, and equitable local food system that supports all eaters in Pueblo, all Puebloans, in living healthy and happy lives. So that's kind of at the center of the work that we're doing and the goal that we're driving towards. If you haven't connected with us digitally yet, please do so. Here is our web address and our social media handle. The web address is a work in progress. There's key information there, but you'll click through some of the pages and you'll say, these aren't looking quite done. You're right, they're not quite done, but I'm hoping that'll be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. But that's how you get a hold of us online. And before we jump into the results, I know we have some real experts on the phone when it comes to this topic, but let's just kind of take a couple of minutes to ask ourselves, if there were more people, I'd say we could use our annotate functions here to type out, what we think food access is. But since there's only a handful of us, I don't think it will be too tricky for us to have a conversation. So feel free to unmute yourself and answer this question. What is food access? What do we think about when we say food access? Don't be shy.
I would say access to adequate amounts of healthy and nutritious food.
All right. I like how you said adequate and healthy. That's a good call out there. Lindy, Katie, you've been in the game quite some time. What's an expert opinion on food access?
I think being able to access food with dignity and engage with it and enjoy all of the different aspects of it, not just feeding a hungry stomach, but everything else that goes along with having good healthy food that fits in our different backgrounds.
So lots of features to pull out there. Something that's culturally appropriate, something that's accessed with dignity. Bernadette says ability to purchase food near your home. Yep, talking about that location piece. Katie, do you have anything to add?
I think the only thing that hasn't been said maybe is around the cost piece, which may be the dignity as well, but just making sure that having the ability to do so is fine. You can find it, but to be able to afford it as well.
All right, all right in line with some of the results that you are about to see. Oh, I skipped over a question. So why do we care? I'm preaching to the choir for the most part, but you know, why do we even take time to consider food access as a thing? What are our thoughts there?
Well, I think first of all, because it's not equitable at this time. So we know it's an issue. And so we need to be able to come up with some ways in which to make it more equitable.
Can you share an example of an inequity that you're referring to?
Well, I think location, cost, all those things we just kind of talked about, we don't have good food access. So people aren't getting what they need.
All right. What other reasons might we care about food access?
I think there's a pretty significant disparity in health in our community versus some other communities in Colorado. And I think that is directly attributable to the quality of the food that families have access to.
Yep. Philip, what do you think? Uh-oh.
Access to healthy food.
Mm-hmm. Lindy, something to add?
Yes, I think food is one of the basic human rights, and that we also know that we can do a lot to make it equitable. So that's why we're here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that I would add to what everyone has said, and you touched on it a little bit, Bernadette, but not only is it about individual health, it's about public health. And it's about how our community stands up and is resilient, and you know how we face our day as a group. You know, when a community is plagued by chronic disease, that doesn't bode well for anyone, even those who are healthy. So I think those are another reason to add another layer in there. Okay. So I'm going to do my best to monitor the chat, but it gets a little tricky when I have the presentation in presenter mode. And I think there's a small enough number of us on the phone. You can just feel free to stop me at any time, shout out if you have something to say. So forgive me if I miss your chat comment. Just feel free to interrupt me or tell me to slow down. So the survey covered the following topics. We wanted to learn a little bit about food purchasing habits. We wanted to get a clear understanding of challenges to food access and home cooking. We're interested in how people perceive local food and how that might change their behavior if they know that it's local. And then we asked very bluntly, how can we as Pueblo community leaders improve access here in Pueblo County? So this is a breakdown of the respondents by location. The survey was open for about 2 weeks. We had over 970 residents attempt to take the survey. Of those attempts, we were able to glean data from 937 respondents, which is really great. And you'll see kind of how they break down by neighborhood. So right off the bat, there are a couple of things that folks are probably noticing. A huge representation from South Side and Pueblo West and some of our more affluent neighborhoods in town. But take a look at the neighborhood with the least representation. You know, east side of Pueblo is known to be an area of our community with low food access. And kind of a different sort of economic set of realities than some of these other neighborhoods. Bessemer not coming in too high either. And so that kind of raises a question for us. And you'll see on the next slide where we're overrepresented and where we're underrepresented in this survey. So it's no surprise that more females than males responded to the survey. We had 79% of our respondents identifying as female, and there are 51% of this community identifies as female across the county. So we're overrepresented there. 59% of the respondents identified their race as white, whereas 51% of the county, nearly 52% of the county is identified as white by the census. We have multiracial individuals coming in higher than, again, overrepresented than what is present in the community, as well as a couple other categories here. Age 35 to 36-year-olds were by and large the largest group to take the survey. And folks with a high school degree were much more likely to take the survey compared to the overall, the overall metric of high school degree attainment for the county. We're underrepresented by our Hispanic and Latino community by quite a bit. Only 26.6% of the survey respondents identified as Hispanic or Latino, and that is compared to 43% for the county as a whole. So there's quite a gap there. The younger generations didn't participate so much in the survey, despite my bribery with pizza and such. We missed out on kind of that younger segment. And again, 65 and over didn't quite hit that representative mark either. If we look at the median household income of those who took the survey, it's well above the median household income for Pueblo County. So we're already thinking about ways to adjust for these underrepresentations, how we can have some more targeted outreach specifically to communities in Bessemer and the East Side to see if we can't bring those numbers up and kind of smooth things out. But this is where we landed on our first pass. I will say that given the fact that the survey was done only online over a 2-week period with a national holiday in the middle, in the face of a pandemic, we're pretty happy with the number of respondents that we got. The 2013 study that Katie mentioned before had over 600. So we were able to add significant numbers to the overall respondent, the respondent group, but it's still important to share with y'all that, there was some significant underrepresentations across some key groups. Any questions on that before I move on? All right, I'm gonna keep it moving. So these are some statistics that we pulled, what we're referring to as secondary data. And these are all from USDA existing data sets. And you might be saying to yourself, yo, why are you showing me data from 2014? That's because it's last time this particular data set has been updated for our community by the USDA. So we just wanted to have a solid site there. But according to the USDA in 2014, Pueblo had 129 full service restaurants, 97 fast food restaurants, 58 convenience stores, and 17 grocery stores. And you may be saying to yourself, oh, I can't count 17 grocery stores here in Pueblo. This also includes places like Family Dollar and the Dollar Tree. They get included in that number. So as of 2018, the USDA is clocking us at 4 farmers markets. I know of 2, so maybe I'm missing a couple. That number might have shifted over the last couple of years, but that's what they're currently calling out on their national data set. And as of 2019, we had 121 SNAP authorized stores. Just in case folks aren't familiar with the term, SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and it is a cash transfer benefit from USDA to individual card holders, what's known as an EBT card or electronic benefit transfer card that allows qualified participants to sort of swipe at the checkout as though they were using a debit card, just like anyone else with a PIN to buy groceries. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of these items that already came up when we're talking about disparity. The poverty rate in Pueblo County sits at 21%, 22.1%. So 22.1% of Pueblo County residents are living in poverty, either at the poverty line or below it, some folks well below it. And when we compare that to the rest of Colorado, it's a pretty striking number, right? We're more than double than the rest of the state. Take a look at the children under 18 number. You know, that's no bueno either. That's almost 3 times as high. And the, you know, our senior citizen population isn't doing that much better. So I'm calling this out early in the game because right now, the Pueblo voice is completely underrepresented at state and federal conversations when it comes to food systems, food access work, food equity work. There are a handful of organizations, Hunger Free Colorado and Colorado Blueprint to End Hunger and Live Well, that are sort of these care and share, but care and share, I'm sure does some advocacy, but they're more action oriented. A lot of these like really heavy hitting policy groups who are kind of supporting the conversation around what food access looks like, what the needs are in our community, and Pueblo voice is not at the table. So if you take a look at these numbers and you kind of just recognize, whoa, we have quite a disparity compared to the rest of the state, yet our voice isn't being represented, you know, something has to be done about that. So I'm just flagging that for folks now in case you're really excited about advocacy or you want to learn more about some of the efforts that the Pueblo Food Project is working on. We would love to have a greater representation of our voice in these forums. All right, let's dig into some questions in the survey. We'll talk a little bit about purchasing habits first. So on average, Pueblo County residents spend $3 per meal per person, and that's less than the average Colorado resident who's spending around $3.29 per meal. And Bernadette, I'm glad you're on the phone. You can clock us if this stat is wrong, but we show about 21% of Pueblo County residents participating in SNAP in 2019, as compared to 8% of Colorado residents as a whole. So we're nearly triple participation in that program compared to the state. And that's great that folks are accessing those services, and we want folks to take their health into consideration first, but it just kind of paints this picture of the kind of the big differences and challenges that we are dealing with when we're compared to our stately neighbors. Okay, so we asked folks, you know, what is good food? And it's important for us to kind of think about what our community voice is when we think about good food. And I'm happy to share that at the very top of the list is nutrition. And that means that our community has a deep awareness of how food is related to health. And I think that's really good for us to see that that part of the education has already been done for us. Folks recognize that what they put in their body has an impact on their health, which is good. Next is safe to eat. And I'm curious whether this would shown up as number 2 if we would have executed this survey not during a pandemic. I'm sure that has heightened some folks' awareness, and of course it's extremely important. So that's coming up at number 2 on the list. And third, this kind of speaks to what Lindy had mentioned and something that I'm very excited about. Folks want their food to be, good food to be enjoyable. Which, you know, is very exciting. And then you see some of these other metrics here that folks are very excited about too. Affordability is on the list, but it's not the top thing on the list, and you'll see that show up later. Grown in environmentally sustainable ways, from farms that treat their workers fairly, treat their animals humanely, et cetera, et cetera. So when we asked, select up to 3 factors that are most important to you when deciding which food to purchase, freshness and quality comes at the top of the list. You know, regardless of who is answering the survey, that one came pretty high on the list there. Then, of course, price. And it's interesting to see price as the second and not the first. that speaks again to the community awareness around how the body and the food relate to each other. Then we have health or nutrition as third on the list, followed by taste, and then some of these other parameters that folks are interested in.
I know I'm never going to finish, huh?
Okay, next we asked, in the past month, how often were you able to afford enough food to feed your household all that you wanted? And at first glance, you're thinking to yourself, hey, this number is pretty good. 65.8% of the respondents were able to feed their family all that they wanted 100% of the time. But then, you know, the numbers began to dissipate, and more than half of the time is okay, but it's not all the time. We want everyone to be able to feed them, you know, feed their household what they want all the time. And then again, that number half of the time. And then we see folks responding at less than half of the time. And then we see some folks who even responded at never. And when we consider the underrepresentation that we acknowledged at the beginning of the presentation around which groups you know, didn't participate in the survey, and we ask ourselves how these numbers might change, I can't imagine that the always number goes up. I imagine that the other categories go up. And so we're dealing with a need here. We want everyone to be in that always category, and that's just not where we are as a community. Then we asked about fruits and vegetables because, you know, well, for a number of reasons we asked about fruits and vegetables, but one reason in particular, this question is a direct carbon copy of that 2013 study that Katie mentioned earlier. And it's an indicator of a handful of things, you know, health outcomes and nutrition education and the ability to buy the food that you want. But you can see that vast majority of folks are eating, you know, 3 servings or less of fruits and vegetables every day. A significant number of folks are eating 2 or less a day. And we know that survey bias, folks tend to inflate when they feel like their behaviors are being assessed or questioned in some way. So we can gather that this is a fairly good representation of what folks are actually doing, but it might actually be less. Folks who say they're eating 4 a day might not really be eating those 4 servings. We'll take it on face value for now, but just knowing how surveys kind of work, it's something for us to keep in mind. And these numbers are not where we want them to be. Again, we'd like to see everyone in that 4, 5, 6 category. And, you know, that's just not where we are. That's not where we are yet. Compared to the 2013 survey, our eating of fruits and vegetables has diminished actually across the community. In 2013, you know, 30% of folks reported eating 4 vegetables or more a day, and 46% eating 2 or less. But now we're seeing that these numbers have kind of switched places, and that's not really the direction we're trying to go. Okay, a little bit more here on health and how those sort of choices ratchet up together, and something that Bernadette called out before. 23% of Pueblo County residents reported that they viewed their health as fair to poor, compared to 14% overall. And you see the site for this particular study at the bottom there. And then compared to the rest of the state, it's no surprise that we have higher incidences of diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and obesity, especially in young people. Our youth age populations are experiencing obesity at a really dramatic rate when compared to the rest of the state. And we can only imagine that this is by, you know, in part due to diet and habit. All right, let's talk about where folks get their food, and this will be an interesting comparison between this and the next slide here. So this is where are you getting most of your food right now? Where is that coming from? And no surprise, vast majority of folks get most of their food from supermarket chains around town. And folks are getting food from wholesale chains around town. But take a look at the number for fast food restaurants. We have 1/3 of our community getting the vast majority of their food at fast food restaurants. And bear in mind, I think only Papa John's and maybe a couple other locations, excuse me, not Papa John's, Papa Murphy's would be considered fast food and is SNAP eligible. So folks are spending their own cash at fast food. One third of the community, by and large, that's their primary food source. So that's a number that we want to keep in mind. But for the most part, folks are shopping at our mainstream grocery stores. Now, when we ask where you would prefer to get most of your food, now we're talking a little bit about that, aspirational aspect of where we'd like to see our food system go. You'll notice that the second thing on the list is seasonal produce stands. And you'll notice that the third on the list is direct from the source. This will come up again later in the statistics, but these are very exciting for us to see as a food project when we're thinking about systems change. You know, what do folks say they actually want? They're interested in more fresh fruits and vegetables available to them. And oftentimes they prefer to buy that direct from the source. Take a look at where fast food ends up on the ranking, where it was 3rd before, now it is 11th. So there's definitely a gap between the reality that folks are living in and the aspiration that they have in terms of where they get most of their food. Yeah, I think these are interesting numbers to pause on. Does anyone have any questions for me thus far? I'm just going to do a quick time check. Or any thoughts or observations you care to share with the group? All right, I'm gonna keep going. So a big question that we had as we stepped into this survey, this research work, was, you know, how much are we actually losing to neighboring communities, folks who aren't satisfied with what they can find in Pueblo, so they're shopping elsewhere? The term that we've been using to kind of talk about this phenomena is called grocery leakage. And as it turns out, the grocery leakage problem, I don't think is nearly as big as folks thought. So 91% of respondents said that they very often or always shop for food in Pueblo County. 69% said they always shop for food in Pueblo County, and less than 1% of respondents say they never shop in Pueblo County. So that grocery leakage concern that, hey, maybe we're not capturing our own local food system economy dollars because folks are taken off to Springs or Denver to do their shopping, that's just not the case, according to those who responded to the survey. So that was exciting to see that there's some real opportunity here, and folks are used to buying their food in Pueblo. They haven't given up on the local food system, and this is where they, you know, the choice that they're already making. So how can we bring improvements to the system to bring them more of what they want and support some of those other items of, some of those other, what's the word I'm looking for? Characteristics to have more local vendors, more of a direct relationship. So this was an interesting one that I think caught the research team by surprise. All right, let's talk a little bit about challenges. And we only have a couple of slides here, but they're revealing. So we asked, which of the following, if any, make it challenging for you to get food? And the top of the list is, I don't have any challenges getting food for nearly 40% of the respondents. which is great. That's a good number. Again, I ask that you bear in mind the communities that were underrepresented in the survey and how this might change if those numbers were smoothed out. And then we see that affordability is the top of the list. So whereas those ideal features, folks are talking about nutrition and health and quality and freshness, and those are the things that are aspirational and that they're looking for, really the reality is the challenge is still affordability. And then we look at amount of time available. This I found to be very interesting because it says to me that folks aren't necessarily against healthy eating or against nutritious eating, but really it's a time management issue. Do they have the food skills that they need to prepare a nutritious, delicious meal on a budget that's healthful in the time allotted to them when they have so many other things going on? We have families working 3 jobs. We have single parent families. We have families that are managed by grandparents primarily, you know, and so how does that amount of time available, how does that factor into our strategy around making options convenient and healthy? How do we kind of get creative there? And some cool ideas bubbled up in this morning's session. So when we get to the Q&A portion, I'll be interested to hear what y'all think. Then we see store hours. That one kind of surprised me as well. And again, I do believe that given this survey was launched during COVID-19, and most of the stores in town have modified hours as a result of the pandemic, I believe that has impacted the rank of this particular challenge. We're used to having that kind of 24/7 access to those super Walmarts and people being able to just at whim purchase what they need. And so my guess is that has had an impact here, calling that out. Earlier, folks, you know, mentioned transportation. And I will say that I didn't include a slide on it, but of the survey respondents, when asked, how do you get food, like what is the mode with which you take, 94% are using a personal car. So whereas before it was a question of, hey, maybe this is a bus route issue or some other kind of transportation issue, of the 900 and some folks who took time to answer the survey in this set, by and large, people are using their own car. So we asked about how much of the food that you eat, do you eat at home? And this is important because it kind of ties back to that fast food piece. And if you look at these numbers, they weren't asked in the same question, but they are related. 66% of respondents are eating 80% or more of food at home. And we remember that around 33% of the community is eating by and large at fast food restaurants. So I just thought it was interesting, that kind of really eerie number connection that surfaced there. But we asked, you know, what makes it challenging for you to, you know, make home cooked meals? And you might be asking yourself, well, why do you care if they make home cooked meals? There are a couple of reasons for that. In general, we can argue that there's more conscientious behavior around food choices when food is being prepared by the individual that's going to be eating it. Sometimes when we go to a restaurant or we're in a hurry, we, you know, grab something off the menu and don't realize what all has gone into that dish. And it's oftentimes many more calories than we might assume at first glance, or maybe we know and we don't care. But the reality is that when we're preparing food at home, oftentimes it can be more healthful, and there's just a little more awareness about the amount that you're eating and what is being put into the dish. So we are excited about bringing opportunities for the Pueblo community to grow their food skills, grow their confidence with at-home cooking, because there are lots of benefits, not just nutrition and health, but kind of the impact it can have on a person's day, the self-reliance it can kind of spark, and the connection that it can bring between families when they're able to share a meal prepared together. And of course, Lindy's on the phone and she can speak to all of the amazing things that happens when people break bread over a meal that they've prepared. But these are just some of the ideas that we're thinking and why we wanted to figure out what really the challenge was there. And so you see at the top of the list again becomes amount of time. And then we have folks who are saying, I don't have any challenges. I'm cool to make my own food, not a problem. And then boom, next, affordable food. So in the open comment section, it was kind of teased out that the perception is that good food and nutritious food and healthy food means expensive. And we need to sort of undo that misthinking. Certainly we can all kind of relate to that sentiment. You know, you walk into a Whole Foods and you're like, how am I going to stretch my dollar here? But it can be done. And it's an equity issue, right? It was discussed before. Healthy, nutritious food should be available to everyone. And it should not be that the perception in our community is that they can't enjoy healthy, nutritious food because they can't afford it. That is a harsh inequity that needs to be resolved. And if it's a perception thing, you know, that's one way to go about it. If it's a reality, that's another. But I think it's probably a mix of both. And so we want to really think about how we can alleviate this sort of time crunch, what's going to make it easier for folks to do this more at home, and then also alleviate the either perception or the true fact that in order to prepare food at home costs more money, especially if it's going to be healthy and nutritious. And then you see some other things on the list that might impact folks' decisions, like tastes and preferences of household and other things like that. But for the most part, we're concentrated in this area of time and money. Okay. Then we wanted to get a sense of, you know, what people's perceptions are when we're talking about local, because the big desire of the Pueblo Food Project work is to really develop a robust local food system. And so we wanted to understand, well, what do people think what local is? And so we asked, how do you define local? And you'll see that a majority of folks, almost half, say it's grown in Pueblo County. And then we have a really funny dip when it comes to Arkansas Valley, because really if we're, you know, doing like a nesting doll of it all, Arkansas Valley would be next. And I think maybe folks aren't exactly clear on what the Arkansas Valley sort of perimeter is. So that one came really low. In fact, it was just a surprise there, but I think that's for the reasons of not having a map included in the question. But then folks are pretty happy to say if it's grown in Colorado, I'm going to call it local. And some folks are, hey, if it's in the United States, that's, you know, local enough to me. And then some folks just didn't have an opinion. But by and large, folks say if it's grown in Pueblo County, we can call it local. And that's great because we want to develop a Pueblo County food system. Then we start talking about, you know, behavior. So would you pay more for food grown in Colorado? And a great number of people said yes. You know, a decent amount of people said no, and a decent amount of people said maybe. They were on the fence. Take a look at the Colorado no compared to the Pueblo no. So even though the majority of survey respondents say local food is food that's grown in Pueblo, less people are willing to pay more money for food grown in Pueblo. That's so Pueblo. Less folks are willing to pay more for food grown in Pueblo as compared to Colorado as a whole. So that's a little curious. And I think, you know, I have my own guesses on what's happening there, but we have some perception challenges that we probably need to deal with in terms of why wouldn't you pay? You'd pay for it if it was grown in Colorado, but why wouldn't you pay more for it if it was grown right here in Pueblo? So that's something for us to bear in mind. But then the last stat on this slide is very encouraging. Would you pay more for food grown by someone you know? And that is, you know, quite frankly, a resounding yes. Almost half of the survey respondents said they would definitely pay more for food grown by somebody they know. And this is important and exciting for a couple of reasons, mainly because when we're developing a local food system, it's all about relationships. I mean, y'all know Pueblo, you live here, we can get across town in 15 minutes. We can be out on the mesa in, you know, about 15 minutes, depending where you're coming from. There's a great farmers market now in Pueblo West. That shouldn't take too far if you're coming from the center of the city. And this is what people are excited about. They're willing to pay more if they have that built relationship. It does a couple of things when you know the person who grows your food. One, it takes away the anonymity in the food system, and it allows us to kind of see the work and the value that goes in. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you buy a bag of chips, you have no idea how many people actually contributed to getting that bag of chips on the shelf. And quite frankly, you don't care, you know, it's like, boom, I eat it, I put the bag in the trash and I'm moving on with my life. But when you step to a farm stand or your neighbor is, you know, producing eggs that you buy, that's a different connection. And people value that more. And so given that the community has this interest in food grown by somebody they know, despite the fact that they're less willing to pay more if it was grown in Pueblo, it kind of gives us an opportunity to really build on these relationships and get everyone invested. This is our food system. This is the way we feed our community. And yeah, we know the guy who, you know, makes the X, and we know the farmer who's growing the Y, and we know exactly where to go when we want tasty blank. Like, we have it all right here. And we really do. I mean, no city of our size in Colorado, I believe, sits as close to its agricultural community as we do. And that's why when folks from out of town come here and they're like, yo, what's up with your local food scene? Where is it at? Your farms are right here. It's very curious because this is very unique. So we need to build on that, which we're excited to do. All right. So before I go into the now what, I'm just gonna stop my share for a minute and yeah, open it up for conversation. So let's talk a little bit about your reactions to what you've heard so far. Let's talk a little bit about what surprised you. And then I'd love to hear from the folks on the phone. If it was your job to make changes starting tomorrow, based on the information you've just seen, what would you do? So I open it to the floor now.
Do you guys have any ideas or thoughts on why some of the pretty significant populations were underrepresented?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that originally we had planned to canvass those neighborhoods door to door and take paper surveys, and that didn't happen. The other thing that I think may have happened is that despite pushing it out on so many different forms of social media and everyone kind of pushing it out to their networks and to their networks, those networks just didn't reach far enough. So I think that is another big reason why we sort of missed some of those target populations, even though we almost got 1,000 folks to take the survey. I've reached out to District 60 already to say, hey, we really missed out on families in these particular areas of the community. Now that school's kind of ramping back up and you have your parents' attention, are you willing to send this survey out to families in those schools? And we'll kind of open up a secret window just to see if we can't get those folks to respond with a little bit of an incentive to do so. So I'm hoping that District 60 will agree to that. But all I can say in terms of the why is that the reach didn't reach far enough. Yeah. Other thoughts or reactions to what's been presented?
One thing that I was a little surprised at was when the slide that was discussing like why they, trying to remember now, why they didn't eat the food they wanted or something like that. I figured that time would have been up further.
Mm-hmm.
And it really wasn't, but it did then come into play when it was cooking your own meal.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like those individuals who say they don't want to eat fast food, they want those direct source and getting their food from the grocery store, but yet 33% are eating fast food, you would have expected time to kind of be more of a factor there.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, just the way people are looking at it, I suppose.
Yep. Yep, that's a good connection to call out there. Other thoughts? Is anyone shocked? Has anything improved?
I think for me, kind of based on my own research that I did prior to this, I wasn't really shocked by the results. The one kind of thought that I had when time available came up being a barrier to people's why they're not making their own food was a connection that has to poverty in the community, and how people who are working multiple jobs really wouldn't have the time to make this food. And I think a possible remedy for that, just in my opinion, would be to try and up community education on meal prepping strategies or like quick preparation strategies to like keep food preserved throughout a week. That way it's ready and there's not much prep time or cook time. And that was just one thing I was thinking about.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Philip, and Lindy is our resident expert when it comes to food skill education across the community. Lindy, does Cooking Matters offer any classes that are like prep your meals for the week kind of thing, that sort of batch setup that might help with some of that time availability issue?
Yes, time management, affordability, reducing a lot. It would address a lot of the different questions that you asked in general, but I also was thinking about how many people had cars that answered the survey, and in my experience having cooking and nutrition classes in the community and helping right now to deliver food to people that wouldn't be able to make it down to downtown to pick it up, those people weren't the ones answering the surveys. And so
Yeah, exactly. We have to bear in mind those underrepresentations are important for us when we're thinking about these results. Okay, any other couple of comments before I jump into just a few more slides here and wrap us up by 6?
I'm going to say and this absolutely is attributable to the underrepresented populations, but I was a little bit surprised by the number of people that said that they had no issue affording the food that they wanted. I'm not quite sure, I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but it was quite high, actually, I thought, for Pueblo County.
Yeah, right around 66 and some change %. Yeah. Okay, and let's jump back in here. All right, so we asked in the survey specifically, how could Pueblo community leaders improve access to food? And top of the list was, we gave them the opportunity to pick 3. So top of the list was more farmers markets and produce stands in my neighborhood. And that really speaks to a lot of the conversations that we've been having around a refrigerated grocery truck that's able to go in and deliver fresh produce to communities with low access, and kind of expanding the farmers market. It has a very narrow window, and really getting more vendors involved. Next, it was improving affordability of the food that I want to purchase. So again, kind of thinking about if folks want to purchase healthy, nutritious food, but they think it's unaffordable, you know, it's no surprise that this is coming up very high on the list. Of course, we see grocery stores there as well. And then community and neighborhood gardens coming in pretty high too. The Pueblo Food Project is working on a couple of strategies through our working groups to sort of start responding to these issues. First and foremost is to build upon and expand partnerships that are already in place in the community to increase the amount of fresh foods and vegetables coming into the community. There are a lot of hunger relief organizations. Some of them are working together, some of them are not. And so it's going to be part of the Pueblo Food Project's work in the coming years to just really help paint that picture of our support network. We don't want to compete with anyone. We don't want to, it's not a competition, this is not a competition. And sometimes we forget that. We don't want anyone to be working in their silos. Of course, we respect everyone has their own vision for the work that they want to do, but why not optimize our resources across the community? Why not celebrate each other's success? You'll hear me say that a lot. So this is something that we're focusing on quite a bit over the next year or two. Next, we want to work with our hunger relief partners to reduce stigma. You'd be surprised at how many folks actually are still experiencing stigma when they show up at the grocery store and a technical glitch happens at the register. You know, they're getting it from the grocery store staff, they're getting it from the people behind them. There's this like look of, ugh, my time is so valuable, why can't you just get out of here? And that's just got to stop. Straight up, there's no reason for that. We need to train our grocery store staff that community health is important for them too. Just because you can afford your own food doesn't mean it's not good for you and the rest of your community is healthy as well. So that's something that we're gonna work with WIC on specifically. We've had a couple of ideas. Bernadette, I'd love to talk to whomever on your team I might be able to work with to get SNAP involved. And then along those lines, when we're talking about participation in food pantries, you know, Care and Share is such a great partner for this community, and we have lots of food pantries around town, but sometimes people are embarrassed to participate in those services. So how do we take away the ambiguity, take away the fear, take away the anxiety, and make it really a community-driven resource that we want everyone to participate in these programs? You know, they're there for a reason, and there's no shame when you're taking steps to bring healthy food to your family. So how can we kind of, again, create a campaign around that specifically, make it a celebration of those opportunities and take away, you know, the shame that people feel when they're using these services. Next, we're taking steps to bring Same Cafe to Pueblo. Same Cafe, so All May Eat. It's a Denver concept. It's the longest running pay what you can restaurant in the country, and they have their sights set on Pueblo, so we're working through a strategic partnership with them. I'm going to start speaking really quickly now. A couple other areas of work that we're planning on in support of kind of creating the changes that people are looking for is developing that local food system. We want to support local businesses to help them get more food to our community. And there's some hand holding that we can do to help folks get up and running. And so we're going to figure out the best way to do that, as long as figuring out a way to incentivize healthy and local food purchasing at an institutional level. What can we do to make sure that District 60 is purchasing the best possible food available and purchasing it locally when they can? Same for CSU, same for PCC, same for our hospital systems, our prison systems. You know, what are we really doing at the institutional level to hold our local community leaders' feet to the fire to say, hey, this is good for everyone and we can make it work? So that's one aspect. And then, of course, this ties into what Lindy mentioned. There are lots of opportunities out there for food and farm literacy and education. How do we bring that under one roof? How do we bring those resources back into the classroom? What community assets do we already have that we can use to expand the opportunities for our community to kind of get this food and farm literacy and education to help them make you know, the choices that are going to be best for their family, but also have positive health outcomes. And of course, and again, I know I'm preaching to the choir with the folks on the phone, but the most important thing that we can do is listen. You know, the door is open at the Pueblo Food Project for every single voice to come in and share their opinion. I try really hard to make sure that folks feel that their opinion is valued and mattered and listened to and incorporated into all of the things that we do. And so if you are excited to get more involved with the project, or if you know folks who you think might be, don't hesitate to send them my information, send them to the website. You know, again, we are less than a year old. We're at 100+ strong of folks on the mailing list and actively requesting to see our information. And I'd love to grow that number, you know, just more and more and more and more and more. Yeah, that is all that I had for today. How did we do on time? 2 minutes over. Thank you very much for spending a portion of your evening with me. I can leave space now for questions if folks have any. Otherwise, you're welcome to sign off. Last call, last call.
Thanks, Monique. That was a really good overview. Appreciate it.
All right. Okay, everyone have a great night, and I hope you're eating something delicious for dinner.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Philip, you got to come to a Pueblo Food Project meeting.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I'm going to send you deets via email.
Awesome.
Bye.
Have a good night.